Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. A very warm welcome to yet another session of Quest series. And today we have a very special guest uh, who is joining us from Bangalore, Dr. Aarti BB. And before we begin, I just want to start with a small prayer. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Quest, as those who have followed our interview series, this Quest series is basically focused on people from different background, professional trainers, entrepreneur trainers, some priests, people in corporate sector, people doing stock trading, people from various different backgrounds, wherein we invite them and talk to them about how uh, Hindu Dharma, how Adhyatma, how spirituality, Vedanta, and other spiritual different paths that we have in India, how these have kind of influenced their life in some way or the other. And towards this end, today we have Dr. Aarti BB with us. Just a few brief introduction to the guest. Dr. Aarti is actively involved in the fields of Sanskrit studies, Indological research and teaching, behavioral and soft skill trainings, and she's founder and chairperson of Vibhu Academy in Bangalore, which regularly conducts a lot of different activities, including teaching Sanskrit and many other workshops on various cultural themes. She is adjunct faculty humanities in Dayananda Sagar University, Bangalore. She is consultant faculty Academy for Creative Teaching in Bangalore, and she is also guest faculty in Performing Arts Department in Jain University, Bangalore. Very warm welcome to you, Aarti ji, and we are very thankful to you for making time for this session.
Thank you so much. Namaste. It's my pleasure.
So now, without much further ado, let me jump in with my first question. I think this is a question I ask all our guests. How did their spiritual journey, so to speak, begin? I mean, what was their earliest influences? Perhaps their parents or some teachers or some books. How did their life journey, with perhaps in a focus on spiritual direction or Adhyatma and Dharma direction begin? So please share us about your journey.
Namaste. First of all, I wish Dvaita Academy all the best. You're doing a wonderful job to connect to our past glory. The essence of Sanatana Dharma is the greatest service we can do today, and your team is doing exactly that. So my compliments and also best wishes to all of you. And well, you asked about my journey into Adhyatma. I think it will be very immodest to say I'm an Adhyatmika sadhaki. Of course, I'm much oriented to this. According to me, or in general, you take any Shastra, any of our spiritual lore, every human being, every living being is consciously or unconsciously journeying towards Adhyatma only. We are either aware of it or not aware, but we are all journeying towards Adhyatma. Atmanam adhikritya Adhyatma is the nirvachana. Towards the Atman. So where is the Atman? It is the core of our existence. It's within, without, everywhere. So the awareness of this starts through some guru, some motivation, etc. But aware or not aware, we are still journeying. So in that sense, all of us, all the time, in all our janmas, every moment are evolving and trying to realize ourselves. So coming to my personal life, this ambience was always there in my house where I was born. My parents are very spiritually oriented, and they have a lot of in our house, it's like a small university. I've learned everything in my house. A lot of cultural atmosphere was there. So my mother, my parents have a lot of love for literature and fine arts and spirituality service. So ever since I started thinking, I've seen this in our house. So it's been a part of our lifestyle. So it was not something extra. I have seen, and with a lot of, my mother particularly is into a lot of social service. She motivates people around in the neighborhood. She's always ready to help. And our house is always like a small temple itself. People come, and we have a lot of bhajans, weekly bhajans programs, and spiritual yatras, puja, utsava, service activities. We go to anath ashramas, vruddhashramas, be with them, help them, raise funds. So my mother has been actively doing all this. My father has been actively promoting all this. So I grew up in this atmosphere. And my mother reads a lot. My parents both read a lot. My brother also. So at a very young age, at around the age of 5 or 6, my brother particularly used to bring me Amar Chitra Katha and Tinkle comics and make me read. Every day I had to read. So that developed a reading passion in me. So my parents and my elder brother are very much the causal for my taste. And I also had an aptitude. I also had this taste. So from a very young age, I love fine arts, I love culture, I love literature, I love languages, I love to travel. And we all share this common taste. So I think because I also had that passion, and the home atmosphere was very supportive, this developed. And from a very young age, I grew up in satsang all the time. My parents would take me to the best of lectures like Swami Chinmayananda and the Ramakrishna Math lectures, the Shankar Math lectures. So at a very young age, I would just sit there and listen to them. But very surprisingly, now when I recall, I could understand something. I could make sense of what they were speaking. When I was still 6 or 7 years, I would come back home and repeat the whole lecture. And my parents would correct me and try to make me understand. So this was my first initiation into the spiritual journey. And it continued, and I took to the study of Sanskritam and Shastras and music and literature. And I love anything about India, Bharatiya Vidyaha. So they were very supportive. They didn't force me to go into a technical subject, become an engineer, become a doctor. When everybody rose their eyebrows, my parents said, no, we know what you are. Go ahead. So I took to fine arts and literature and spirituality. We traveled a lot. We traveled in the Himalayas. I even postponed my marriage plans. We just used to travel a lot like sannyasis, go to different parts of Himalaya, trek, stay in the ashramas, stay in the wildernesses. Like that, it was I think I owe it all to my parents. So this was how I grew up, and I got some of the best gurus, best teachers in Samskrita, in literature, in Vedanta, in everything. And my own Swadhyaya, everything together. So I think there was a ladder, somebody was pushing me upwards and somebody was pulling me upwards. So I'm very lucky. I don't know if everybody gets this kind of an atmosphere at home. But I was lucky that I got this ambience and that helped me, that nurtured my spiritual orientation.
That's amazing. Aarti Bhagini, you mentioned two things while you were responding. That how your influence of your parents resulted in you studying Shastram and Sanskritam. So my next question is, did Sanskritam come first and then the introduction to Shastram, or did the introduction to Shastram first happen and then to the Sanskrit?
I think they came together because my love for Sanskritam was kind of just a desire for till I crossed high school, because you know how the schools today are, like just for the sake of the exam they were teaching us. So it was very superficial, and they would teach us Sanskritam in English. So that I wanted to understand in the original. I had that passion. So I was always looking out for a guru. Luckily, we had a very great scholar, Mahamahopadhyaya Vidwan N. Ranganatha Sharma, one of the tallest scholars of Samskrita fraternity. He is our neighbor. So my mother used to tell, look, he's a great Vidwan. And to me, he was just a Pakkad Mane Tata, like grandpa neighboring, in the neighboring house. But then I always knew he's a great scholar. So I would go now and then ask him some childish questions, and he would give beautiful answers from the Shastras. And I would tell him, where do you find all this? He would say, this is in Manusmriti, this is in the Ramayana, this is in the Mahabharata. And I would say, can I read that? Of course you can read all that. You have to learn Sanskritam. You read the originals, he would say. And he would suggest many books. In fact, every time I would go to his house, he would give me so many books. I still now have a treasure. Some of the books even carry the signature of DVG. DVG was his close friend. So I was
Oh.
very lucky. So listening to the Shastras was always there, but I always knew that this is only translated knowledge. And however perfect the translation is, it can give you the spirit, no doubt. It can give you the content knowledge very well. But sometimes what happens, the ashaya of the karta, like if Valmiki has written something in Sanskrit, his original intent and content in that spirit, in that intensity, will reach us only when we connect to him in that language. Like when you tell me something, I do my best to interpret it exactly as it is outside. But it may come up with my own mixed ideas. So this is the problem. I'm not demeaning translations, because we had the best of translations, best of interpretations in all languages. So I don't say that people who don't study Sanskritam will not understand. But learning Sanskritam is a great tool. So listening to the Shastras is also one thing. Learning Sanskritam and reading the Shastras in the original is another thing. It's like Anubhava Ikavedya. When you enter it with your understanding of the language, there's a lot of clarity. And it's as if Vyasa is telling you, Valmiki is telling you, that direct connection we get. So this happened simultaneously. So towards my college days, I started exploring where I can learn. We didn't have all this internet stuff, etc. So then I heard about Aksharam. I went there and started learning from the beginning, from the scratch. And that was how my journey into Sanskritam started. And I was just kind of sucked into that. It was very interesting because considering my love for language and literature and the Shastra Bhasha, the poetic beauty of Sanskritam, everything attracted me. I had the best of teachers. Then I had teachers like Tyagali Ramachandra Sharma. I had teachers like Professor K.S. Kannan, and then Dr. Shatabdani R. Ganesh, and they were all so affectionate to me. And all the teachers at Aksharam like Vishwas Mahodaya, Nagaraj, Janardhan Mahodaya, and our Satish Azad Mahodaya and Shubha Bhagini, everybody, and very great Vaiyakarana expert Vidushi Vijayalakshmi Mahabaleshwara Bhatta. So like that, and then our Dr. S.R. Leela, who was my guide in my PhD, and then my music and Sanskrit guru, my Dr. T.S. Satyavati. So each one, they're all really stalwarts in their fields. So they all, with a lot of affection, they just opened the doors for me. They took me ahead. There are many more. I might have missed some names, but all of these. Now I'm learning Shilpa Shastra also through a very great Shilpi. I'm actually an artist basically. So that passion also was there, drawing, painting and all that. So I'm learning professional Shilpa Shastra through L. Ganapati Bhatt, Ganesha Bhatta. He's also teaching through our academy now, Shilpa Shastra. So all these together, music, Sanskritam, literature, Adhyatma, I'm lucky I got very good gurus. I owe it all to my gurus, to the Parampara.
That's a wonderful insight. I would say, my next question is related to what you just mentioned. That you are basically a performing artist, and you have done, I think, your PhD in music and music, right? Classical music.
Sanskritam. Right? Sanskritam. I have done my master's in music and master's and PhD in Sanskritam.
So my next question is related to music and correlation with Adhyatma. I mean, in my understanding, the Hindu, in the Hindu worldview, so to speak, everything is sacred and everything has a spiritual dimension. Even what we consider most mundane things can be a tool to attain the highest. So from this perspective, how do you see music as a whole, and specifically the classical musics of India, the Carnatic and the Hindustani music, with respect to it being a tool or a path to attain the divine?
Actually, you said it. Everything here is sacred, because the journey into oneself is a very personal thing. And what is the block here is our ego. So anything that dilutes the ego is a path. We are just removing the blocks. We are just removing the cover over truth. So like the very famous this Vishavasya mantra is there. A prayer to the Lord Aditya. It says, Hiranmayena patrena satyasya apihitam mukham. So satyasya mukham apihitam. So is it's just covered. Tattvam Pushan Apavrunu Satya Dharmaya Drishtai. So that is for the sun god, for Surya. It can apply to anything. We are only unveiling the truth. So any path that can elevate us. In Kannada, there's a very beautiful padya by which he says, Deva Mandira Bhajane Puja Prasadagalu Jeevana Dalankara Manasinuddhara Bhavavam Kshulla Jagadim Bidisi Melo Ivu Davudadoda Moditu Mankutimma. It means that this temple culture, bhajana, puja, seva, anything and everything, karma yoga, jnana yoga, shastra, shravana, etc., etc., any and every path, they're all bhavavam kshulla jagadim vidisi melo. They're here to free the mind from the small, the cheap bindings of this is mine, I want this, I want this. No, we are lost in calculating our joys and sorrows. We are lost in calculating what I got, what I lost. And I keep on blaming somebody. Oh, he's because of him, I didn't get, because of him, I didn't get. So we are always looking outside and we act as if we have lost something, gained something. But in this beautiful nature and in this beautiful play of life, we are not here to gain or lose anything. We are just here to realize ourselves. And everything outside is only facilitating. It is only facilitating. So if we understand this, anything can be a beautiful facilitator. And music is one such a beautiful thing, because the nada, the rich vibrations of sound, anybody and everybody can get elevated with that. Even a person who is not consciously a spiritual person, even he or she can kind of enjoy the elevation that music gives. So it's called Nadopasana. And that nada is not just that saptaswara nada or the gross sound. That nada ends in laya. We use the word shruti and laya. Liyate iti layaha. So after the nada is sounded, it merges back into its original anahata nada, the unsounded sound. That is the omkara. So to merge into that laya is the essence of music. So Shruti and Laya come from an unheard Shruti and Laya. So that is again Omkara Upasana. So like this, our Rishis, our Arsha Parampara in Sanatana Dharma, everything from cleaning my house, from taking care of my parents, taking care of my kids, and being a good host to my guests, to be a good teacher, good parent, good human being, good praja, good citizen, to vote properly to the right person, not having any prejudice, to do anything, to just serve the environment, to water a tree, to give food to a poor man, or to sing, to dance, to paint, to draw a rangoli, to cook, anything and everything. When my mind is elevating from above the material details into a beautiful spiritual expanse, then all that is, of course, a beautiful spiritual journey. So this is how even music becomes a spiritual journey. Music is also a spiritual journey because it's a rich experience of nada. Of course, it's the nada we can hear, but the heard nada leads us to the unheard. You see, just you can play the tamburi and forget yourself. And after you have played the tamburi, just sit quiet. There's that nada is lingering on in the mind. So this is what Ramana Maharshi also says. He says, somebody tells him, there's so many thoughts coming in. He says, listen to the silence between the thoughts. Where the thoughts are coming and going. Like the Akasha, the clouds form and the clouds melt down into rain. So this is happening in the Akasha. But the Akasha is always there. So your focus should be on the Akasha. So the focus should be on the Anahata. That is why every mantra starts with Om. Every nada begins and ends with the Shadja, which is the Adhara nada. And the Shadja again is a representative of Om for us. So this, you see, there's a connection between everything. When you read the Natya Shastra, particularly the Abhinava Bharati, which is the beautiful commentary for Natya Shastra, it was written by one of the greatest Avadutas, that is Abhinava Guptacharya. In the last chapter, he brings the whole essence of all fine arts, because whatever we call fine arts today, Gita, Vadya, Nritya, and also this Kavya, Chandas, all these, even acoustics of theatre, etc., all this which is discussed in the Natya Shastra, he brings a connection and he takes it to Vedanta. And every Devata is called Nada Priya. Veena Vadana Priya, Venunatha Priya, Nada Lola, Gita Lola. The puja is full of Gita Avadhare, Gita Samarpayami, Nityam Samarpayami. So this idea is very beautiful. That is why for us nothing is sacred and nothing is realistic. Everything is pavitra. It is the bhava included. A person may be performing puja, but he may be doing it so that everybody thinks that he's a dharmika. He may be monging for an image. He may be seeking some material pleasure. He may be seeking the destruction of somebody else. Then he is not an adhyatmika jiva. He is using puja as a medium to attain his material ends. But I may be doing a very materialistic job. Take the example of Lord Krishna. Who else? The busiest statesman, the busiest politician he was. And he says, he's called Yogeshwara. Name partasti kartavyam tishalokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptamyam, he says. I have nothing to do. That nirlikti, that disconnection, the art of connecting and disconnecting. So when we learn to disconnect and just go into the expanse of the Atman, even music is a sadhana, dance is a sadhana, everything is a sadhana. And music has the more of that charm to it. It's called the aesthetic charm. That is why people tend to forget everything in music. Aha, that alhada, it takes you into this adhyatma. So this is what I see. Nada is nothing but omkara, which is expressed through different sounds.
That's simply fantastic explanation. I think you summarized, perhaps give a bird's eye view of the entire Nadopasana, and I'm sure all our audience will greatly appreciate this. In the course of your response, you mentioned one important thing, and I want you to more highlight on that. You mentioned that in our culture, how even cleaning the house, looking after the family, welcoming the guests, these are all considered as a sacred activity. Now, in the Shastras, for example, these are all comes under, for example, specifically in the context of women, they come under Stri Dharma. And we have a lot of texts like Stri Dharma Paddhati by Trayambaka Yachavan. And we have this Stri Dharma or Pativrata Dharma. These are very highlighted in our Ityasa Puranas and Smritis also. But this is something which is completely demonized, so to speak, in today's contemporary narrative, in media, in academia, and in feminist movements, especially as something which has been used to kind of oppress women or keep her limited to the house or something like that. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, if a person dislikes something, they will go on weaving everything wrong about it. So the prejudiced mind looks at that. If we are honest seekers, if we study the originals, you study any of the original Smritis, they are not only sanctions upon women. We have Purusha Dharma, Stri Dharma, Varna Dharma, Ashrama Dharma, many are there. Everybody has duties and rights. Duties, rights and some Vidhi Nisheda. The Vidhi and Nisheda are there for both. But they do this cherry picking. They pick up just the Stri thing and only some lines, that took partial lines, not even a full line, just a phrase, and paraphrase it in such a way that it gives a very demonic meaning. This is nothing but a very intentional atrocity on our dharma. And here we are so de-linked from our Shastras. So anybody says anything in blah, blah, blah in good English, we think, wow, anybody who can articulate in English is a great scholar for us. And even the greatest of scholars who have studied for 40 years, 50 years and is telling Hangallama, it is not like that. Look, this is the essence. We don't care because he is not from Harvard, he is not from JNU, etc., etc. I call this modern superstition. Most of us are suffering modern superstitions. Our ancestors were very open-minded. So with this Pitika, I am coming to the point. This Grihastha Dharma, which you mentioned, is not only for women. It is not all this taking care of children, taking care of parents, and taking care of the home, etc. It's not only for women. In Taittiriya Upanishad, there's this Acharya Upadesha, when the Antevasi, the Gurukula Vasi, has just graduated out and he's going back to his house and becoming a Grihastha. So there's a Anushasana, there's a follow-up advice for him. The Guru says, Veda Manuchya Acharyonte Vasina Manushasti. What does it do? What is Anushasana? Satyam Vada, Dharmanchara, Swadhyayanma Pramadaha. All that he says then, Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atithi Devo Bhava. So this is for anybody. It is not exclusively for a woman or a man. It is for both. So Grihastha is like a cart with two wheels. The cart cannot go on one wheel. And there's a beautiful distribution of labor. Okay. So I have a lot of clarity about this because I've discussed this with many great scholars and read the originals also. It's about who will do what. Look, I'm a mother also. Okay. So when it comes to my son, the very personal needs of my son, the first person who will think of that is automatically a mother. It's there in our psyche. Nature has given us Yadevi Sarvabhuteshu Matrurupena Samstita. That's something we should be proud of. It's nature's power with me. It's a woman has that matrutva in her. It is something to be proud of. That is why in our Samskriti, the highest position given is that of a mother. We call a baby also Baramma Vogamma. In the West, they don't understand this. I don't know, because they are not born and brought up in this cultural context. But for us, mother is the highest ever place in life. The sacrifice a mother can do, the leadership a mother can have, the way she handles a family, the role of a grihini is extraordinary. Every grihini is extraordinary according to me. Because an ordinary girl, a teenage girl who is with her dreams, she gets married, she's thinking of just me and my husband, romance, etc., blah, blah, blah. But the moment she has a baby, there's a transformation which happens very naturally. Very naturally. She may be having a fight with the other people, but with her child, she'll be an angel. With her baby, she'll always be an angel. She can never be dishonest with her child. The best qualities in us, the tyaga, the prema, vatsalya, shakti, forbearance, and all that forgiveness, it comes with regard to our children. And that should grow. It comes with regard to my people, my husband, my children, my brothers and sisters. And coming to the family, the woman's vatsalya, the capacity, it grows in such a way that it holds the family together. It's a love of a woman, it's a love of the housewife, it's a love of the mother of the family, which maintains the mental health of the family. I can go on about this. This is an exclusive topic to really go into details, because I'm also a lay counselor. I counsel many people. I see the problems come, usually when the woman is really frustrated. As long as she's tolerating, everything is perfect. She's like the shock absorber in the car, So this is a capacity which nature has given us. And this is the capacity which has been adored. Why Matrudeva Bhava first and then Pitrudevo Bhava? Because Matrutva is a very great power. It's there in men also, it's there in women also. But it comes to a woman very naturally. Her body, her mind, her intellect, everything are so equipped to keep a family together, to lead a family. Not just a family, even a beautiful sister. Take the great queens like Abbaka Rani, or you take Channa Bhairadevi, you take Kittur Rani Channamma, Jhansi Rani, Ahalya Bai Holkar, and Durgavati. You take all the great queens. They were all Matrumurtis. You see our Indian queens, Indian warrior women. They are not the nail polished beauties slipping on a coach waiting for a Rajakumara. They are usually the Matrumurtis. They have no time for nail polish. They're always on the field. They are riding horses, they are riding chariots, and they love their subjects as their own children. Jhansi Rani, who was hardly 25 years old, she looked at her whole subjects as her children. See the height, it's not about age, it's not about biological motherhood, it's about that realization of the motherhood power in us. A woman who realizes that motherhood power in us. See our own Sudhamurti, I have great regard for her. She's a great name in technology. She's a great philanthropist. With all that, I see a lot of that motherhood in her. She's so loving, caring. That love she has, that is Matrutva. Just thinking of oneself as a showcase doll. No, you should not have pimples. What shampoo to use, what soap to use, how to always appear young. And if somebody says, "Aapko vivah ho gaya hai, oh, aisa nahi lagta," to I feel so great. This nonsense should go. It's not about just keeping the body appear young. What will people say? She'll say that she's appearing young. They know you're not young. So what is the point in always trying to appear like something? It is about what we can realize within. So that is why they asked every woman to look within first and realize that matratva. Come out with that power, everybody will respect us. Nobody will wink an eye at a mother figure. They will wink an eye at a showcase doll type of personality. So this is the realization our parampara has, and this is what they advised us. And you see the best of queens, best of warriors, best of spies, best of dancers, musicians. In all walks of life, women have had a very big share. Before Renaissance, there was nothing in Europe for women. But in India, the oldest queen you want to trace back, you have to come back to the Vedic Itihasa. So women have always given, who has to give her rights? She will have her rights all the time. She's a mother. She will decide. If her priority, look, as a mother, when I had my baby, I chose to give up many of my public activities. It was my personal choice. Nobody forced me. Nobody threatened me. But I can't tolerate, I didn't want my baby to grow up with somebody else. So that tyaga came naturally. And I'm proud of it. I don't feel I miss so much public time. I miss so much money. I don't feel that at all. I'm happy that I could give all my time to my son. So this is how the Indian woman has grown, and this has been badly demonized, and it has been demonized by people who have no respect for womanhood. They are making a commodity of her. You expose your private organs and do as you will, go on the streets and behave like a demon, and they think that is freedom. That is not freedom. That is irresponsibility. That is free will. You don't respect your body, who else will respect your body? If you don't respect your personality, who will respect your personality? Achievement and empowerment is not about just doing what you want. It is about showing responsibility towards a family, towards the marriage institution, towards the society, towards the environment, towards the culture, towards the parampara, towards the elders. Man is a community person. We cannot claim we are independent. I don't believe in this nonsense called independence. We have used everybody as a ladder. We have used our parents, and we use our teachers. We have used our resources. We are indebted to everybody in life. We have to live like this. That is why Sanatana Dharma teaches you to live like this. We worship everybody. We worship the trees, the vegetation, the rivers. Why? That's because we are indebted. I can't live without all this. So this is the idea which has been very badly, intentionally demonized. I call them fools, but they are dangerous fools because they can articulate in good English and somehow try to convince us. And people who fall for rhetoric, believe them. So please don't fall for rhetoric. Come read the Shastras, connect to the culture, understand the spirit behind all these dharma, karma and the norms. And I think we will have a clearer understanding of what the Smritis have told.
That's wonderful, Bhagini. Your point about independence kind of completely resonates with me, and it reminds me of the famous verse from Manusmriti, which has been completely demonized. Nastri Swatantram Arhati. Those who are demonizing simply miss a very simple point. In the dharmic worldview, we are all dependent upon dharma. First, nobody is free from dharma, and nobody is free from the community as a whole. But most importantly, nobody is free from dharma. So what is being stated here is same only. Nastri Swatantram, in the sense she is not independent from dharma. She has to follow dharma. And that has been completely blown out of the proportion. But actually,
the word Swatantra itself needs to be defined properly. Unfortunately, most of them, this again comes from the distance from Sanskritam. Swatantra in the Desha Bhashas means freedom. That is how it has been used. But originally, you have to dismantle a word to understand what it is. What is the meaning of Tantra?
Unprotected.
Tantra means technique. Tantra means means. Tantra means methodology. Tantra means a path. Tantra means a style, whatever. There are so many meanings. And Swatantra means to decide on one's own. So that is how the meaning freedom has been derived. There's one more important meaning here, particularly, where Tantra means to leave somebody to one's own, one's own pathetic state. To see that a woman has nowhere to go. She's absolutely helpless. There's nobody to care for her, listen to her, to share her emotions. So this is the, if you see the whole context of Manusmriti, if you take the whole line, if you take the whole Stri Dharma, it's all about protecting her, giving her dignity. So when he is talking about that, suddenly he can't say, don't give her freedom. That is, how can it be? It's very absurd. Manu Maharshi is far more intelligent than all of us. So suddenly when he's talking about the protection of women, giving her dignity, he also says, Atmanam Atmana Yastu Rakshe Yusta Surakshitaha. This is directly verbatim from Manusmriti. He says, you cannot protect a woman by confining her to home, putting some tent on her, making her sit inside a room, closing the windows. Atmanam Atmana Yastu Rakshayuhu. Only those women who know how to protect themselves, Taha Surakshitaha. They are. So he knew very well that you can't protect a woman by just confining her to home. You have to give her the training. You have to give her the training physically, mentally, morally. She has to never be vulnerable to anybody else. Now, how Sita protected herself in Kalanka because of her willpower, because of her manobala. So this is what we have to give. And the word Swatantra is completely, that is where I told you in the beginning about translations. Translations do this wrong. Even people who mean well, even they will translate it as just freedom. Why don't you take all the meanings of the word Swatantra and take the right word for the context? There's a context there, right? Quoting anything out of context will give a wrong meaning. So Swatantra means don't give her to a helpless state, take care of her. That is what it means.
And we have a very rich commentary traditions, and various commentators have actually explained this term Swatantra as not being left as unprotected, not as you highlighted. But moving on, I think we have another 20-25 minutes. So I want to discuss some of your activities in Vibhu Academy. I think you established, I think 5 or 6 years back, or perhaps earlier.
6.5 years back.
Yes. So can you just share about the goals and the vision and what are different activities that you're doing through the Vibhu Academy?
Okay, thank you. So through Vibhu Academy, we are working mainly on 3 areas. One is we are doing trainings, actually, behavioral trainings. I'm also a behavioral and soft skills trainer. So from almost 20-25 years, it started as a hobby first. I used to go to these government schools and this orphanages, of course, with my mother and all. And I would try to motivate them, tell a story and give them love, and not just give them some food and come back, but stay with them, spend some time with them, motivate them. So that is how we realized that it is not just the food or money that we give, but it's the love that we give. One good word of counsel can do a lot. So even now, once in a while, I meet somebody on the street, they run to me and say, Aarti Akka, you had come to my school, you told us that, you remember I asked that question, you told me this answer. So I wonder, after 20, 25, 30 years, that kid now, a grown-up person, still remembers that. I don't know how much they remember about the textbooks and exams and all that, but they remember these words. That is, any good word which touches the heart is very important. So that is how motivating people became a part of my life. And I realized that I can be very happy by motivating others. By giving joy, by giving love, we are the happiest people in the world. So we should not seek for love and counsel. We should always give. And that is the secret of being happy. So then that slowly became a profession. I started working with Dr. Gururaj Karjagi in ACT, Academy for Creative Teaching, a wonderful educator and a great trainer. So I must confess, I learned a lot of professionalism through him. And that was where my training skills were groomed into a profession. And with his counsel, with his advice and many other people's advice, and of course my husband's support. Now we started this Vibhu Academy in 2015 in April on Akshaya Tadige Day, and it was also sudden. It always was there on our mind, but my baby was very small. We were just waiting for him to grow up, and then it so happened that I was a resource person for the Sutturu Matha, so for their educational programs, and that Swamiji suddenly told us, why don't you start doing camps for youth? We will support you. We have this resources in place. You are doing a great job all independently. Why don't you do it here? So we thought, yes, then we need a label, like I can't just use my name. So we always had this on mind, and it materialized, and we started this Vibhu Academy camps. So the first thing we started was spiritual camps, where we have camps on Hindu Dharma, understanding Ramayana, understanding Bhagavad Gita, understanding Mahabharata, Bhagavata, then Shiva Tattva, Devi Tattva, Veda, Upanishads, like that, different topics. We started. Then we had online classes in Sanskritam also. Then we started having a lot of online courses. Now presently we have online courses on Kautilya Arthashastram. Then we have courses on Natya Shastram. We have on presently the Bharatiya Vijnanam series is going on. And then we have the Sanatana Dharma courses, batch after batch are going on. We have the Shilpa Shastra courses, Vedic mathematics courses, and Sangeeta, Shastriya Sangeeta courses, harmonium classes. And then we have for kids, we have Katha Kuta. We are starting Sanatana Dharma and temple courses for kids. Then we have this Sanatana temple course, where we discuss the temple architecture, iconography, the science, the philosophy, the aesthetics, everything together. And slowly we have a wonderful team. I have an excellent scholar called Vidwan Arjun Bharadwaj. Is a very good adept in this field. So he is with us doing a wonderful job. Then we have some trainers like Meena Kumari and Sri Vidya Nagaraju. Both are very senior trainers. We do a lot of teachers training and bankers training, students training, and leadership training for miscellaneous groups, for women, for children, different age groups, different target groups. And that is one thing. And these Indian studies area, which I told you, like Sanskritam, literature, music, Shilpa Shastra, aesthetics. And we have a lot of heritage tours. We take our groups, big groups, to different places. They have a lot of fun. They see a lot of Indian places, villages and heritage centers and different devasthanas. We live in the jungles. We stay in tents, like that. You know, we have a lot of fun. So many people say, "Wow, I thought Switzerland is wonderful, Australia is wonderful." There's so many wonderful places in Karnataka, Shimoga Pakdalide, Bengaluru Pakdalide. We didn't know. So it's really going fine, mainly because of the kind of enthusiasm that is pouring in. And we have from the age of 4 till the age of 90, we have students. So based on the age, we have target groups, and it's really going fine. This apart, we do also counseling. So we have this Bhagavad Gita Vachana programs for children, where the whole of 700 shlokas are being taught. We have 3 wonderful teachers, Sharada, Kshama, and Savitri, for that. And then we have a good counselor called, she's a psychologist called Sumana. She's now taking up the counseling part of our thing. So for women and students and children who come, you know, they're just distressed. They need a sounding board. They need somebody to listen to them. And by listening to them only, we have half healed them. You know, they want to pour out their emotions and feel lighter. And then just a few tips about how you have to accept life as it is, and etc. Depending on the nature of the problem. Sometimes if the problem is very grave and it's repeating, then we suggest they meet a medical psychiatrist or a counselor. But many of things we can solve as lay counselors. Lay counseling is a system, it's a training given by the NIMHANS doctors only. We are trained how to manage simple problems of people who are in trauma, who have some loss, it's because of death or some accident or some loss or some disappointment, some failure, love failure or examination failure or examination stress or marriage stress or some coping problem, things like this. Not everything needs to go to the psychiatrist. And in India, people have a stigma to go to the psychiatrist. In America, every family, every individual has a psychiatrist, personal psychiatrist, because Appa, Amma are not available. They go there, give money and cry their heart out. But here we have our best counselors are our parents, husband for the wife, wife for the husband, or you go and sit to Bhagavad Gita and listen to a Bhagavad Gita lecture. The counseling happens from within. So this beautiful Indian value system, the family system, this, you know, we don't know this value. Because Ittal Gida Maddalla, we got it easily. We will understand the value of this. I have lived in West for some time. I've traveled to different countries. When I stayed there for some period. Then I realized that how we are lucky. It's very few marriages actually last for many decades, and the idea of being together, living together. People used to ask me that you married somebody whom your husband, your parents chose for you. Like they can't. But I would say yes, and you're still with your parents after you cross 16 years. So they don't understand this context. But for us, we feel guilty if we stay away from our parents. We feel, oh, I'm offending them. So this, the concept of being together, consoling each other, supporting each other at times of distress, that it cools down everything then and there. And that is largely lacking today in the urban population because of the convent education, of course. Whatever the British left, it was the unscientific education where rote learning is everything. Learn and vomit that on your answer sheet, get a degree and forget about it. And then fly off to America and send your parents to old age home. This is a kind of, what do you call this? A mental disease, a degeneration. This is what is causing a lot of misery in people's minds. We are not machines. We are human beings. We have an emotional need. And that emotional need is given through culture. If you don't have a cultural orientation, we will suffer these depressions. People who know how to, look, you see many retired people, they go to ashramas and devasthanas. It is not stupidity. It is not just it is not just belief, like our English youth say, English-speaking youth say. It is the best way to counsel oneself. Instead of going to a psychiatrist, go listen to a beautiful bhajana. Go participate, do some service, go to an anatha-ashrama, listen to some lectures, read something, write something, teach somebody, do some tuitions, go on a walk, talk to people of your age. This is the way you can make yourself very light and happy. That is how we should live. So they are doing it right. But our youth are not, youth think, oh, Bhagavad Gita keltare, all old stuff. No. I think we have to change the definitions. The youth today are most miserable. You see how suicides are happening, how marriages are breaking. They fight and chase English. So English is only useful for that finally. With due respect to the language, what I'm trying to convey is that it is not just a bunch of English words and a degree and a foreign trip which will make us successful in life. It is about how we connect to people, how we love our people, how we compromise. Life is also about compromise. Having my way means losing everybody. To gain everybody, I have to compromise my ego. All this our culture teaches. So today we are doing counseling through Vibhu Academies just to give them the support which they think they lack. So they can always connect back to their own people, their own family. Just help them to come out of that ego problem or that desperation and see that, yes, we can live together. Just keep this ego aside and connect to everybody. So this is also one service we are doing through Vibhu Academy, soft skills and behavioral training. Then Indian studies, Indological research and training and teaching and all that. It includes all fine arts, literature, shastras, everything. And then we have this counseling programs. So it's all going fine by God's grace.
Do you also, how do you kind of incorporate Indian values that you just discussed into your behavioral training programs? How do you kind of incorporate these teachings that we have received from Bhagavad Gita and our teachers and gurus and sampradayas? How do you kind of reformulate in a practical manner, in a modern manner, so to speak? How do can you share more about that?
Yes, as a trainer, I think the most handy material I get is from our Shastras and Bhagavad Gita and Chanakya's Arthashastra and Swami Vivekananda. You might have heard some good trainers who these days, the Deshi inputs are really increasing. You can see that everywhere. But when I started off some 22 years back, I didn't consciously attempt that, but whenever I was talking to people, I was trying to convey an idea to teachers or students or anybody. Naturally, something from Bhagavad Gita, something from Ramayana, something from the Puranas, it would from the folk culture, from the folk stories, one proverb, Kannada da Gade or Hindi ke Muhavre, something would come in. And all these have been, ours is a very long, parampara of thousands of years. So lots of trials and errors and Jivananubhava have created wisdom in our people. So they have written down all this. And today we think that training is something else. Training is about how you dress, how you stand, how to move your hands. And this kind of a communication skills training is given outside. I don't subscribe to that. I tell people that you have your own style, how to stand, how to move your head. That is not what we need to train them. Help them develop the content, help them develop an insight, help them to articulate what they have on mind properly, with clarity, paraphrase properly, talk properly. And this is what we have to guide them. And we have to give them, everybody is made differently in this nature. You know, we all have a special faculty. To ape somebody, for somebody to just copy somebody is actually ruining or abusing the worth in me. So our training is about making Uddhare Atman Atmanam Natmanam Avasadayet is what Krishna says. You should empower yourself. Na Atmanam Avasadayet. Never look down upon yourself. This one line is so beautiful. A beautiful session on self-empowerment can be designed using this one shlokartha, part of the shloka of Krishna. Atmaiva hyatmano bandhu, atmaiva ripuratmanaha. You are your own friend, you are your own foe. You are accountable to what you do. Don't blame anybody else. If I am vulnerable, then I will contract COVID. If I'm immune, if I'm strong, if I'm careful, if I wear my mask, I will not. So it is up to me. COVID will be there, but I have to counter that properly. So this is these ideas. This is not just about Krishna, about Bhagavad Gita. You have such ideas from the Puranas. In fact, I have a whole package where I discuss leadership from our rishis. Agastya is one kind of a leader. Troubleshooter. He can give a solution for any trouble. You go and read the stories of Agastya. For any and every type of problem, he has a solution. So anybody, they go to Agastya finally. And you see Vasishta is a transformational leader. Just his presence can make changes. Vishwamitra, a wonderful dynamic leader, a performer. And he also delegates to the right person. Like this, you know, you take Hanuman, he's a wonderful leader. So different rishis, you take the stories, you know, they all represent some very beautiful aspects of human behavior. And these human behavior, this pattern of human behavior can only come to a man who is very wise, who is ripened with experience, and who has foresight, and who has a very vast understanding of life, and who has a love for humanity. You know, this is what I have seen. So they come handy to me. And without much effort, it very automatically pours in. I don't consciously bring them in and try to make it a deshi package. I don't have any such agenda in me, but it comes very naturally. So because of my background, and it has been taken very beautifully. Many people have walked up and told me, wow, I got a different perspective about Rama. I got a different perspective about Krishna. I really want to study the Bhagavad Gita. Somebody says, where do you get all this stuff? You get here. I even suggest books. You know, this is our beautiful tradition has already given us such ideas. And we think they're all old stuff. No, because we have this, we have been conditioned to think that anything worthwhile should come from the white race in the West. It's that conditioning, colonial hangover, which we have to come out of. And there's a lot, with due respect to everything, Ano Badraha Katavo Intu Vishwataha, let good things come from the West, come from the East, South, everywhere. Even if something good comes from Pakistan, I think with due filtering, we can take that. But we should never forget that there's always a lot of wisdom packed in our own roots. So we should respect that, and we should have an open mind. Then we get jnana from everywhere. And this is how our packages are, our Vibhu Academy packages, at least which I handle. We naturally bring in a lot of these topics. And I also not only take from the Puranas and all, I take from our Indian history. I take the examples of Sardar Patel and Shivaji and different very, very successful kings and social leaders and economic leaders also. And I also take the examples of the contemporary people, like it could be Narayan Murthy, and it could be all such people, you know, who are very, there are many such exemplary examples of leadership from our own country, from our own. Sometimes when I'm talking to a Bangalore college, I talk about a Bangalore person only. A Bangalore woman or a man who has done a great job. I've told the stories of Coffee Pudi Sakama. Most of them don't know about her. They're all coffee lovers here in south part of Karnataka. And this woman has created a revolution in coffee. How many people know about her? I've made a video also upon her. So she was such a dynamic woman. A young widow with a lot of money. She doubled the money, tripled the money. She was a millionaire in her time, and she did so much of philanthropic activity. If coffee is so popular all over Bangalore and Mysore and this whole area, it is because of her. How many know about her? So I tell her example. Then students stand up today, they immediately go Google search, Urena coffee pudi sakama, they show me. This is what we need to do. I think this is a great service we can do to connect back our people, we are looking outwards, outside the window. There is something beautiful inside the house. Let's see that also.
Thank you, Dr. Aarti. It was a wonderful session. If only we could have continued it for another hour, perhaps. It was wonderful discussion, and we have so many things more to discuss. Perhaps we would love to have you on our platform in future also. And thank you for giving us your time. It was very insightful, lot of insights that I'm sure the audience will deeply appreciate. With this, I would like to conclude this session of Quest, and I request our viewers to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you so much for this beautiful interaction. Thank you, and I wish you all the best. I wish Team Advaita Academy all the best. Thank you so much. Namaste.